Ember.
Oh, I love that name.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aww. So this is the space. Yeah, like right now, so we started renting this space. I feel like we were looking at 4 spaces before the pandemic. And then it's kind of hard to get a space in here. So a space opened up, like an actual rental opened up like during the pandemic. So 2 of our people who are in the group that, you know, rents this space out was like, let's go for it. We're like, okay, if you want to pay the rent, go for it. And so yeah, we've had it ever since, and it's just us who kind of use it. Got some comfy vibes. This is not like the finish. This is the pandemic setup. Yeah. Because it's only like a few people using the space really to do art stuff.
Yeah, like rope bondage.
Yeah.
Like, what do? They just like, wait, did they do porn?
No, like they tie people up, and in some cases they'll suspend or, you know, whatever. But yeah, it's for erotic purposes.
Ooh.
Not particularly like porn or whatever.
That's so cool.
Cutting into you, and then just have people eating other things that are not him while he is like blindfolded and feeling like he's being cut into. That way that he could, you know, experience that like fantasy without, you know,
Hurting himself.
yeah, with the like that's not, you know, like
Because we can't all just wait for a zombie apocalypse to happen.
Yeah.
right, and you want to be like, so a lot of things with like, so we tend to call them like kinks versus fetishes, right? At least the definition in my head of a kink versus a fetish is like, the textbook definition is like, a fetish you need to have to like come to climax, right? But I feel like, I don't know where kink came from, but, what'd you say?
I said like kink could be like more of like a way to spice up sex, but like a kink isn't necessarily a fetish. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of how I separate the two. But I think also some of that separation, because really the words are kind of interchangeable, is like the stigma, you know, because a lot of people in the lifestyle are still very much like functioning human beings where, you know, fetish has the stigma of like, you know, you need this, you can't survive without it type of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I do identify that like, you know, kink is a major part of my like sexuality. Like, I'm poly, so I can, you know, have vanilla relationships, but if I needed to be monogamous, that person couldn't be vanilla. Like that person would have to be like a switchy, kinky individual like myself for me to be like satisfied within that relationship. Now, could I be monogamous? That's a whole other can of worms. Because a lot of my kink is not sexual, and a lot of my fetishes aren't sexual. So there's a part of me that like would need my monogamous partner to like understand that, you know, because like I have friends that I do scenes with where like there is no, it's just a fun thing that we do together that is fun, you know, like kinks are fun. There is a lot of psychology behind it. Like there's a lot of trance-like headspaces and endorphins that, you know, I kind of see it as a hobby. And just like running or rock climbing or, you know, yoga, partner yoga, you know what I mean? They have a lot to do with adrenaline and, you know, just having a good time, dancing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
It is a term derived from the idea of a bend. So somebody's, you know, sexual behavior is alternative to what is considered the norm. And where, you know, fetish, for the most part, is defined as like something you need to reach climax. But a lot of those, you know, in the mainstream and even in some parts of the community, kink and fetish are used interchangeably. So, yeah, kinks and fetishes don't always have to be sexual though. I think that's a common misconception, yeah. Ember, come here.
Are there any kinks that go good with other fetishes? Like peanut butter and jelly?
There's a lot of kinks and fetishes that pair together. So there's usually the like activity that you do and then the way you do the activity. So meaning like rope or impact, and then the like tone that you put over top of that scene. So whether that is like dominance and submission, or more like meeting on equal terms and having it to be more playful, for it to be more like very serious, or for it to like have like an age regression element to it, you know, like a big and a little playing with each other, doing rope. Like these all could be rope scenes, but they're all like very different scenes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so I have a friend who, she's a little and I'm a big to her, but it's little sister, big sister, so there's nothing sexual about it. It's just kind of a reflection of our friendship. So we've done ties where I've tied her up in a mermaid tie and then told her a mermaid story.
Oh, that's sweet.
I like that.
We did a tie once. It was at a St. Patrick's party. So I told her a story about a fairy leading a little girl into a forest and then growing a rose bush over top of her.
Aww.
Yeah, and I tied her to a bondage table and put rope roses all over her. So the tie reflected the story that was being told.
It's really interesting how like kinks can also be used as like a method of storytelling as well.
Yeah,
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I'm definitely an artsy person, always been an artsy person. So, and creativity and theatrics kind of go hand in hand with exhibitionism, which, you know, a lot of the community, since we are playing in public spaces, you know, has that like flair for the dramatic. So, yeah. Yeah. Woo. There's actually a really cool trend that was happening in porn, where they would film the negotiation process and put it as the DVD extras. So if you like actually bought the film, they had different extras where you know, actors were warming up with each other, where actors were negotiating, and that was really cool. And that is kind of a cool way to do that, I think, too, is like having it there and available, but as an extra, not a part of the art itself.
Porn is also usually a personification.
Right.
It's very fully immersed in the fantasy and the experience, and not necessarily showing you all the moving parts that go into making the resources and the time and the safety to actually do the things,
Right.
like a full room full of people.
Yeah, it would be nice if they could figure out how to actually portray that, because I think the toxic side effect of, you know, not including the negotiation and the self-discovery that everybody goes through when they go into kink is that lots of people come into kink not wanting to have those conversations.
Or like thinking that they prescribe to a certain role
Yeah,
or part.
right.
You can prescribe to any of them at any time.
Definitely.
If your fetish was a snack, what would it be and why?
That's a hard question to answer.
Snickers. When you're horny, eat a Snickers. Sorry.
What would it be? Anything?
An appetizer sampler. So All the
I
things.
want to try a lot.
Yeah.
You are very much the, I want to try a little bit of both things.
I like- Yes, I like doing all the things.
I would say it would be chocolate, because I find chocolate really satisfying. And usually, after I've done kink or the things that I like, I feel satisfied. Like there was something that I wanted or needed, and through doing a certain kink practice or expressing a certain fetish, I feel satisfied
How could someone get involved with you guys or another group?
The internet is the best way, period. FetLife, which you've heard Anna say a few times, is basically a social media website. It's not, though there are a lot of people like, they have individual profiles where they express themselves and it is sexual, it is much more like social media, and you can use it that way. You can find local events and things like that. Sometimes, if you live in more progressive cities, they'll actually have like fetish fairs that you can visit. I do suggest finding a local munch though, which is it's just like a neutral territory place where you can hang out with people and ask questions. But you do have to be 18 or over, which I know is hard because a lot of people start to explore sexuality at younger ages, especially now. But yeah, the internet. But be safe. Don't meet strangers.
Yeah, definitely. FetLife isn't really set up as a dating profile. If you try to use it like Tinder or OkCupid, you will be very frustrated because it wasn't built so that you could look up individual people. It was built so that people who know each other can connect, and it can connect you to local groups. Also, I think if you're looking for, there's also books too. I really like The Bottoming book by Dossie Easton and Jane Hardy. They also wrote The Ethical Slut, which I think is a great, if you have any alternative type of sexual thoughts or you just want to be empowered as a sexual individual, please read The Ethical Slut. They also have a book on topping and radical ecstasy. They're all great reads. I love Dossie Easton and Jane Hardy, and I might be saying their names wrong, I apologize. Yes. And they've also come out with multiple versions of their books. So Ethical Slut is on its 3rd version. And I think the new Bottoming book is the latest version of that. And so these books came out in the 60s actually, and they have written just different versions to update the language in the books. Yeah, to be inclusive of the changes in gender and the changes in the community at large.
Do you think that when you're young, doing research is a really, really good way to pass the time? But also, I think that a good place to look is like, if there are like LGBTQ plus groups, sometimes they will be and sometimes they won't be open to talking about kink or fetish, because it is a subsidiary of sexuality and or gender and those sort of practices. So like, I think bringing it up maybe in like sex positive spaces and talking about it is kind of a good way to explore the idea of it without actually like just diving in and going and doing things that we were dangerous.
Yeah. And then we didn't talk about whether we want to talk about our group personally.
Well, one of the things I was also going to say is just, like I said, like you could go to almost any large event and find kink. You can go on any form of social media and find kink somewhere in the realm of that. Like there's rope all over Instagram. There's kink all over Instagram. There's TikTok, obviously. It's all over TikTok. Everything's on TikTok now. But you can find things there, but like that's about like picking and choosing and being careful. You want to like find a lot of it, read all of it, take it in, and then like choose what seems right and what doesn't seem right. And it is actually pretty straightforward if you follow your gut and try to be progressive.
Right.
Something seems like ooky, fishy, or off. It's probably not the right stuff to pay attention to. But we are known by PGH Rope, and you can go on the internet and put in PGH Rope, and you will find us. There are also other rope groups in Pittsburgh and kink groups in Pittsburgh. It's not super hard to find because we are fairly progressive and fairly queer city, and when you find things like gayness, queerness, sex positivity, gender fluidity, you're also going to find things like kink and fetishes.
Yeah, and you can also find us, you know, we have our own website, we're on FetLife as a group. You can also find us on Instagram. I know I have a personal Instagram, but my Instagram is rather sexual, so like, I don't know if it's appropriate for a high school audience. But that's my rope Instagram.
It's pretty generic.
Yours is pretty generic. So yeah, if you can plug your
Just
Instagram.
photos of people in rope, usually fully clothed. But my Instagram handle is milkglass, and glass is spelled GALS 5. So just pictures of people, very general, like all types of body shapes, fully clothed. I am very ace and gray leaning, and I do rope as a physical practice, not necessarily a sexual one, depending on the moment. So like my Instagram is very sort of like straightforward.
Yeah. Go check out Milk Glass. You will definitely see me on their Instagram. Yeah. And if you're 18, you can follow me. But yeah, mine's a little bit more thoughty.
Have y'all ever come in contact with someone named Forrest? I follow her on Instagram. Her Instagram name is $13 Box of Mice, and she always posts pictures of her on ropes.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, honestly, rope is so popular. And Instagram and the internet is heavily saturated with it. Whereas when I started, it had just come into the scene, and then when I started out in Pittsburgh, it had just started to become really popular, and anybody who did it on the internet was like instantly rope famous. Like I only have like 900 followers on Instagram, and I'm considered well and widely known up until like right before the pandemic, and now rope has become so popular and so ingrained in some communities' queer culture that it's like there are people who do rope on the internet now who have like thousands and thousands and thousands of followers.
Yeah.
And I know those people. It's just it's too flashy Latin for me, and choose not to participate. It becomes about likes, and I'm just not here for that.
Definitely, yeah. I'm gaining popularity. I just got on the rope Instagram game. I tend to be into social media mediums that are more picture-based. If you find my FetLife page, it looks like I barely exist on purpose because, you know, as an individual who is very femme presenting, you can get a lot of messages that put a lot of their kinks on you right out the base, and you know, it's not a fun experience. So, you know, I use Instagram to more express myself and my kink, because I find Instagram so far to be a little bit more respectful. Also, I kind of set up my Instagram in a way that I was okay with more receiving more sexual comments. But my FetLife is more just for posting, looking for events. So I keep it pretty like minimal. Yeah. FetLife goes.
Alright, a fun trivia fact question. Do you know where the word sadism comes comes from.
I don't.
Alright, so so there's a French philosopher, Marc de Sade. He wrote a lot of like stories involving sadomasochist play and stuff. He didn't coin the word. That's just who inspired that word. So
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
I have to learn something.
Do-do-do-do.
Of course, it would be someone French though,
Right.
right? That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I think that is all I have for your questions. Thank you guys.
Okay,
for
cool,
your
thanks.
time, and
That's
let's get to
terrific.
Suspending.
Right.
Jusqu'ici, tout va bien. Mais l'important, c'est pas la chute.
So I think the most misunderstood thing is that it's always derived from a place of trauma. I tend to actually not really engage. Like, I do have trauma in my past, but I tend to not engage in kinks, that relate to my trauma, or it'd be like considered like stereotypical type of things. That's what my therapist and my psychiatrist is for. My kinks come from a place of connection and having fun with my lovers and friends.
Sort of the same tune. I think a lot of people think of kink or fetishes as being super alternative or hardcore, and that's not what you see most of the time in the kink community and out in real kink life. It's very much just like any other interest or hobby. People are pretty calm. They're actually usually just dressed in like everyday clothes when they interact most of the time, unless they're at a special event. And the atmosphere is pretty light most of the time.
That's awesome. What is your favorite part about this community?
My favorite parts about the community so far have been the connections that I've made and the camaraderie when it comes to individuals in this community. People tend to be very friendly, kind of shy. People can be really shy, but if you're willing to put yourself out there and be polite, they will open up their arms.
So when I first came into the scene, my favorite thing was that I felt like I could be 100% myself. I grew up very quiet, very reserved, and incredibly shy, and I didn't really know how to put myself out there. So, and also I was not really popular in high school or anything like that, and I got into kink in my early 20s. And when I came into the kink scene and I was myself, I made friends very fast, And I did initially become what would be thought of as like popular in the scene because I was young and I was new and that's the thing that happened, so that was a lot of fun. But like Anna said, as time went on, you just kind of get comfortable with people, you make friends really easily, you get to be yourself, and that's my favorite thing.
That's really cool. The camaraderie between people and stuff. Are there any things that you guys dislike about the community?
I think, there is kink flex culture, and it's just, I mean, and it's just as toxic as, flex culture in our world, and can lead to some very dangerous situations. So, when people, lose the cores of what kink is, which is like connection and fulfillment, and instead lean into like what's the next biggest baddest thing I can do or the coolest thing I can pull off, I get really annoyed with that. And also when people tie one leg up and then want to jump across the floor, that's also a small pet peeve of mine. As long as that one person at a rope event that they're like, just tying themselves, vibing out, and they'll like tie a fudo, so they'll tie their one leg shut, and then they'll be like, can I move around, like walk around like this? And I'm always just like, oh my god, and this is,
You're gonna fall.
right, you're gonna
You're
fall,
gonna fall or break something.
right, you're gonna break your nose, and then you're gonna bleed, and then they're not gonna want us to go back.
I agree with Anna though. Just like any kind of subculture, there are pitfalls, and it's easy to become super popular and lose sight of why you initially came out to express yourself, and who can do the next biggest baddest thing, who can, and most fetishes are based in pain, danger, doing practices that are unsafe for your body, and when you become more concerned with what's cool or what's going to make you look cool so you can be like popular on the internet, you start doing dangerous things and you lose sight of expressing yourself in a natural way that isn't just for like getting likes or having people who like you. Also, just like any other subgenre, there's just a lot of patriarchal beliefs, and if you fall into the wrong crowd within kink, it can be incredibly patriarchal. It can be incredibly like gender conforming, and like there's male female couples, and like you'll only see like white people in some places, and that drives me crazy because for me this is something that I want to be really inclusive, and it can be very exclusive sometimes. I hate that.
Yeah, sometimes you have people who are running these things that really are only thinking about like what they want for themselves in a space like this, and I find that to be really toxic for the community overall, because you need to be not just thinking about throwing a party how you want it to be thrown and what would make you feel most comfortable. Like you should be thinking about the diversity of your space at large and how to make everybody feel comfortable. I think one of my favorite memories is we had a party at there's this event that happened every summer, and the party theme was like back to high school or something like that, something very corny. But I was on doing the playlist for that, and I made like a concerted effort to include songs from everybody's high school experience that I know that would be attending that space. And I also asked other people like, what are the big songs from your high school experience? And we worked hard to make the playlist cohesive because that was a challenge for sure. But the next day after that party, I had so many people walk up to me and be like, thanked me for including songs from their high school experience, and it not just being, a monolith of what high school trauma should be.
There's also a ton of pretty privilege.
Mm.
But like bodies should look a certain way. People who are smaller or look traditionally more physical fit are more likely to interact with others, get play, become popular, be seen on social media, because kink is very popular on social media, and really anybody can do kink, any body can do kink, and pretty privilege is a big thing.
Really insightful. Yeah. What do you think could help make fetishes and kinks be seen as less taboo?
So, things that I'm passionate about, and that is getting legislation that actually supports kink, and so like consent to abuse laws to be turned around and seen through more of a like kink positive scope, because a lot of states still have a no consent to abuse. So if the cops are called for one reason or another, you can get into trouble. Also, the threats to people's jobs. There's definitely, people are very secretive in this community, because you can still, have your children taken away from you, lose your job, lose your livelihood just for being a kinkster, and that's what I would like to see happen.
I personally believe that it's going to take a lot of things happening before we get to the point where kink or fetishes are more widely accepted. I think that it's going to have to start in schools with proper sex education, and then work its way up and through to possibly the legality of some sex work. But honestly, I think that kink cannot be desexualized. Some people will say that desexualizing kink is the answer. I think it's over-sexualized at this point. I think being realistic about the fact that kink or fetishes don't necessarily need to be practiced in a sexualized manner will show people that they can be practiced in a multitude of manners, and then you can choose whatever you want, sexual or non-sexual.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you guys have like a favorite gathering to go to?
It's super hard because a lot of things as of present have, so like us having to take a break from the real world means that we've put a lot of the real world under a microscope. So a lot of the kink community has been exposed for having people who run events being toxic, because to run an event is to hold power. And then like bits and pieces come out about those underlying structures of those events possibly being toxic or be things that you don't want to go to. My personal favorite events are things that are usually like organized in open space camping venues. So like there are some events held by like Dark Odyssey, or even some local groups or throughout the US where they do, like they take over a camping ground for the weekend, and you have a lot of room to spread out and meet people. There's a lot of different classes that you can take about kink, and you can have spaces where there's like a little home base of the people that you know really well, and you get to stay with them when you want, and then you get to branch out. And I've found that people
Oh my god. It just says movie recording has been stopped automatically. I don't even know.
Mine's still recording, right? Okay.
Yep.
Alright.
So like, but even people who have gone to those events for the very first time tend to find friends very quickly, and then feel like they have like a home base, and then you have all these other places you can explore. And because the event is outside and it's large, Usually, if you're not having a good time, you have access to spaces where you can go be alone, or it's easy for you to then leave, because you might not enjoy the event.
Yeah, and it can be a lot. So yeah, to piggyback what you were saying, I do like larger events. It's there's a bunch of different national events that go on, and I do like the larger ones. I've been to some hotel ones too. So usually they're either at like a campsite or they're at a hotel. And I do prefer the camping ones as well. I think right now my favorite events is online education events. Those are still going on, and the very few blessings in the pandemic. But one of them being that I can now go to classes on the West Coast very easily because a lot of them are online, or I can go to classes that are international. Karate House has been doing a lot of rope education. That is very cool and very accessible and very inclusive. Yeah, definitely. There's different website resources that you can go to find information about this. Since this is for a high school project, if you're under the age of 18, there's a website called Scarlet Teen that you can go and look up, good sex education, kink education for people who are under the age of 18. If you're over the age of 18, there's things like FetLife, which is kind of Facebook for kinky people. It is a adult website. It is not for people under the age of 18. Just wait, it's okay. You'll get there. But yeah, and you can basically on FetLife find local events, but you can also find more national events. There's events that go on everywhere. But there's also a lot of online education. That's probably been my favorite right now.
Yeah, looks like the internet makes things the most accessible. It's the easiest way to find affordable events and education. But also becoming involved in an online community or space means that in reality, almost everything that you go out and do, any event that there is, any Comic-Con, any Renaissance Fair, there's going to be a subsidiary or a subsection of kink people who attend those events. So it's very likely that you can find an event that is, kink adjacent, and you won't necessarily have to walk into a kink situation where you can go and meet people and not necessarily be pressed to do kinky things.
Yeah, they had, was it Anthropon had a rope class this year? Or last year? The year before, I don't know. It was something like that. But yeah, and that's been really cool to see. Yeah, also Ren fairs, if you ask the vendor for the 18 and plus section, you can buy kink wares at the Ren fair.
People in the back.
Yeah, behind the curtain. But sometimes if you walk through the Ren fair, there will be different kink things on their display mannequins. Like if you know what to look for, you'll find it. Yeah, you'll find it.